Who should be in charge of the overall training process of an MMA athlete? The main MMA coach or the conditioning coach?
That's an interesting question, and we have a similar conundrum in team sports. And team sports started developing a role called a performance manager or athletic director. So that's a person that's familiar with all the domains, or being familiar with the skill work, being familiar with strength conditioning, being familiar with the recovery and the rehab. So that's a managerial role, and he pretty much sets the stage and let the other specialists do their own work. But he makes sure that the global load is maintained. A friend of mine, James Smith, just wrote a book about it. So pretty much the whole book is about that type of role, because if you have specialists that don't communicate, so if you have your wrestling coach, you have your MMA coach, you have your strength conditioning coach, and they don't communicate, there's a high risk. The training load might not be balanced, so to speak.
And that's why I asked.
So it should be a person who oversees everything. If the skill coach is familiar with, it doesn't need to be expert in everything. He needs to be familiar with all the domains or all the components of preparation. As I mentioned, that's skill work, physical preparation, recovery, nutrition, psychology, and he needs to make sure that all that is there's a good communication between the coaches. They are all on the same page. So not sure. I mean, it doesn't matter. Most of the time it's a MMA coach or a skill coach, because he's the main guy. But I guess that having a performance manager might be better. It also might reduce the stress on the skill coach. So he focus on the skill rather than focusing on everything. Making sure the hotel is ready, making sure post-workout shakes are there, and so forth. So
it makes a lot of sense to have a performance manager. Of course, that's possible in high-paying team sports right now. I don't know if it's possible to do that in MMA just yet.
Yeah, the UFC just built or just opened a performance facility, and a friend of mine from UK, and he was in I think the USA for a while in a college sports. I think he's now like a performance manager for UFC training facility. So he makes sure that everybody is coordinating. So it's a quite novel role. But the other thing is, and since we are both fans of Nassim Taleb, the risky thing is if you have one guy making all the decisions, if he make a bad decision, it's going to affect everything down the road. But what you want to do, and this is not this role. So once you want to do, is you want to distribute the decision making, and you want to distribute the risks.
Decentralize.
So, yeah, decentralize the program. So you don't want to have one guy telling everyone who should do what based on his ideal training program. He should rather coordinate. So it's like a managerial position, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. I can see many benefits to this approach. First of all, it reduces the friction between different coaches, because neither of them is in charge but the performance manager. And also, as you say, the decision making is not centralized, it's decentralized. So one can only make so much mistakes. You can only make a mistake in your domain, not in every domain.
Exactly right. So the information flows up rather than down. So this guy is collecting stuff from bottom up, and he's not forcing decision top down. So it's just making sure that everybody's on the same page and making sure that there's a communication. And most of the time it's the I'm pretty sure when shit hits the fan, it's always the communication between coaches or communication between coach and athlete. So just making sure the communication channels are there, making sure to review the training frequently. That's that role pretty much.
If this is not possible yet for every team, I'll ask you again the same question in a different way. In my opinion, sports and strength and conditioning coaches are more educated about the training process than skill coaches, usually, not always, but usually. So they have a better understanding of how much a body needs to rest after each kind of training session and so on. So perhaps they should be in charge of when the athlete does what. But the skill coach is of course in charge of doing everything skill-wise. So what do you think about that?
I agree, but the strength conditioning coach has less skin in the game.
That's true.
So even if he's more educated and more educated in multiple domains, the skill coach, he has the skin in the game. So I will always choose him, just
Right.
because he's at the risk, and sometimes because of that risk, he's gonna like last minute he becomes scared, and he try to just put extra, and it's like a brake. So you need to have so the skill coach is kind of like an accelerator, and strength conditioning coach could be a brake in this scenario. So just
Right.
making sure this guy is not going overboard with some stuff.
Right.
So again, it's like a coordinative thing, but the main guy should be a skill coach for the sake of him having a more skin in the game or being affected more. Although, as we know, if something goes bad, the first thing you're gonna blame, it's not you, it's someone else. So, and we all know that in team sports, if in season, if things go bad, the head coach, especially in team sports, so it's soccer, the team coach is gonna say, we were not physically prepared, we didn't run much, so it's your fault, buddy. But if everything goes well, and they're gonna say, oh yeah, we prepared strategy and tactics really good. We overrun the guys, and it's our tactics and strategy. So it's human nature again.
If you want to master MMA fundamentals, check out my instructional called MMA Essential Lessons. In it you can learn about clinch takedowns, boxing, grappling, Muay Thai, ground and pound, Thai and puppet master clinch, escapes from inferior positions, and shooting takedowns. Check out the link in the description below.